All right. It is unofficially official. South Carolina has their next offensive coordinator. We discussed, is Mike Shula the right fit in Columbia? Absolutely. Locked On Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. I hope all of you are having a fantastic Wednesday and a great halfway point through your week. Before we get started, as I always do, I want to say thank you to you guys. Thank you to listeners. And thank you for making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we are a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Remember, new users, if you sign up and place a $5 bet, as long as you win that bet, you will get $150 in free bonus prizes and free bets, all for just a $5 win. Make sure you go to FanDuel.com to sign up today. It's America's #1 sportsbook. All right, we got a good show for you today. We got deep dives to get into. We've got reactions because South Carolina has a new offensive coordinator. We talk about the fit, what it means moving forward, and so much more. And then we also give some updates on the transfer portal and the latest there, not only with people leaving, but who is visiting and potential targets as well. And then award season is in full swing, and Carolina cleaned up. Why don't we actually, why don't we start there? And it just makes me so genuinely happy when people get deservingly rewarded. And there's so many times in football when they get it wrong, right? Like there's so many times awards that are given out, like the Heisman just become a quarterback award. Like there's other awards I feel like when they're given out, it's just like the biggest name on the biggest brand of a team sometimes. Like the SEC announced their end of season awards today, and they got it right. Kyle Kennard was your defensive player of the year. Lenora Sellers was your freshman of the year, and Shane Beamer was your coach of the year. Listen, awards and trophies and all that kind of stuff, like personal awards, is not why anyone does this or plays this game and puts in all of that hard work. Like, obviously you want recognition, success, and all this kind of stuff, but like the team awards obviously come first. But it is so good to see good things happen to people that deserve it, and every single one of those people I just mentioned deserve to win those awards, and I'm so glad they did. All right, so let's get into the news that broke last night, and it's not official yet. I haven't seen it officially announced anywhere. Like, I haven't seen Beamer talk about it or anything like that, but it's about as official as it can get, right? Unofficially official, the next offensive coordinator for the South Carolina Gamecocks for the 2025 season, Mike Shula. I tell you what, I was almost a little bit surprised looking at some of the responses. We brought this up on Saturday. Halftime of the SC Championship game, did an emergency pod. Dowell Loggains is leaving to App State. And we brought up 3 potential candidates. I told y'all then, the idea that I had for it was, all right, here's 3 names that I think are reasonable potential hires right off the bat. And then next week, we'll get into more like deep dive of like longer lists of candidates and maybe some more unknown people or whatever. Nope. Beamer clearly had a plan for the direction of where this team was going to go. He clearly had a plan for in case he was going to lose Dowell Loggains. Like that alone, like this decision being made in 3 days, I don't look at that as like, oh, you made a rash decision. What that tells me more than anything is Shane Beamer has his hands on every single moving part of this program, not just what's happening right now, but all the things that are happening for next season and the next 4 seasons and beyond, like the future of the program. He is so much more like, I think, like focused and in tune with every single possible angle that like I'm getting ahead of myself. Hold on. there's so many moving parts in college football now. Like roster management is huge. Recruiting is obviously huge. Having to actually coach a team is huge. But there's more things you have to deal with as a head coach than any other time in the history of the sport. There are more responsibilities. There's way fewer days off if there's any at all. And I think a lot of times outside of Columbia, especially over the last 3 years before this season, Shane Beamer was viewed as a guy that is head over his skis, like in over his head, not fit to be a head coach, too young, too whatever. And all he continues to do is make what I think are really good decisions, just continues to win on and off the field. And again, the word I keep coming back to is the culture that he's created. I tell you what, Mark Stoops opened his fat mouth a while back, and I like Mark Stoops. I probably should have said fat mouth. But he's the one that went out of his way to kind of insult Beamer about the stuff at media days. And you look at where those two programs are right now, and since that comment was made, like it makes me so happy the fact that Beamer is continuing to succeed, because there's so many people that were frustrated or I think he was kind of viewed as like a Eli Drinkwitz type guy from people outside and like outside fan bases. All he has done is shown like the confidence in himself and the decisions he's made. He knows exactly what he's doing. And I think that is something that rings true with this hire. Now, the immediate thing people are going to go to with Mike Shula is this. Well, he's had an incredible resume that is highlighted the longest list imaginable of jobs, all with like the highest level in this sport. I mean, over 30 years NFL coaching experience. Like, if you're not familiar with his actual resume, I didn't even realize, I knew who Mike Shula was since 2003 when he became the head coach at Bama. And I knew he played at Bama, and I knew that his dad obviously was the winningest coach in NFL history. I didn't know that until last night. Shula was, I think he was like a first-team All-SEC quarterback, got drafted like the 12th round in the NFL draft back then, played one season, didn't go well, became a coach the next year. Like 1 year out of college, he's like, I don't think the playing is really for me. I'm gonna start coaching, and then just hasn't stopped. Like over 30 years of coaching experience in the NFL. Now he's had I think 2 jobs that were not NFL jobs, and it was the head coach at Bama for 4 years, right before Saban, and then this job at South Carolina he's had for a little over a year as an offensive analyst. I think it's a good hire for a number of reasons. I got into the numbers. We're going to get into those in a second. I think that a shallow way to look at this, or an easy way to look at this is like, well, it's a perfect transition because he's already been there. He understands the offense, and Lenore Sellers, he's familiar with him. I don't think this decision was made just because, hey, this guy knows how to coach with Lenore Sellers. I think it probably was part of the decision, because we talked about this the other day. Like, we all know the season that Shula has the OC for the Panthers with Cam Newton. I'm not comparing Lenore Sellers to Cam Newton right now, not yet. Physically, they are one of one generational athletes. And what Shula did in 2015 with Cam, yeah, like that has to make you somewhat excited about the potential of what he can do with a guy like Lenore Sellers coming off of the momentum that he had in the second half of the season. I will also tell you that you talk to like people around the program, like, remember the first half of the season. We've talked about it a bunch on here, and I remember telling you guys the numbers, like, this is what it looked like in the first half. This is the improvement in the second half. And it was night and day, right? Part of the reason for that incredible, transition from very, very pedestrian numbers, like very, I mean, you're talking about Brock Vandegrift type numbers from Lenore's over the first couple games, especially passing. And then all of a sudden, after that Ole Miss game, the light came on. And it just never went off. It just kept getting brighter and brighter. And one of the main reasons for that is Mike Shula. Now, there's a lot of things that Shula does well that I don't think people really fully understand yet. We're going to get into those as well. I want to talk about the schemes and what you can expect from his offenses. and what might change a little bit from Loggains to him. This is the third or fourth OC that you're going to have under Shane Beamer. I think it's probably the most confident he's been in naming one. Otherwise, it would have only taken 3 days. Like, Beamer has been, if nothing else, he has been so solid foundationally in his decisions. He heard all the outside noise. Excuse me. Heard all the outside noise about Clayton White going to last season. He knew what he had. He heard all the outside noise about Lenore Sellers. And people, like, hey, how come you haven't named a starter yet? And he was like, he knew what he had. Like, Shane Beamer fully understands who he is. He fully understands what he has at his disposal right now from a roster standpoint, talent standpoint, and a coaching standpoint, and what things that he has to turn to make this engine run. And I think the addition of a guy like Mike Shula, it does seem like a no-brainer. The fact that he was on staff, like we talked about this in the beginning of the season, before the season even started, that I told you there were 2 hires that I was more excited about than anything, like for the offensive success going into the season. And it was Shula being an offensive analyst and Sean Elliott. Like those, you bring such a wealth of knowledge of the game, such an incredible track record of developing quarterbacks, and like doing it at the highest level with Shula. Elliott, everything he brings to the table, like the tenacity, the toughness, like the way the run game gets going, like those 2 are going to be great together. They already have been. Now, let's go to a quick little break here. And when we come back, I want to talk about just some of the numbers to expect. Some things you might not know about Mike Shula that I think are even better, are going to make you even more sold on the decision from Shane Beamer and company today. We will get to that when we come back. Locked on Gamecocks continues next. Okay, so before we get into some of the numbers and things from Mike Shula and some of the offenses he's run most recently, I do want to remind you, today's sponsor on the show, go check them out, our friends at FanDuel. Get ready to close out the NFL season and kick off bowl season in a big, big way with some wins. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in free bonus bets. All you have to do is win your first $5 bet, and you get $150 for free. It's that simple. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Like I said, that's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so back to Shula. I love the hire. I think it's great. And again, the way it was made, how quickly it was made, that alone gives me way more confidence in the hire than maybe anything else. There is no other offensive coordinator in the conference, if not the country, with that resume. There's just not. And you guys all, if you watch the NFL, you know job security is not something you just like have in the NFL. Like the days of having an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator for a decade at a time, that's non-existent at almost every level of football. Like high school, college, NFL, whatever. This guy kept a job in the NFL at that position for a decade and a half, 2 decades, and was in the NFL coaching for 3 straight decades. And in the 4 years he wasn't, he was the head coach at Alabama. Here's something that people forget about with Mike Shula, and it's going to become very evident very quickly. He's a hell of a recruiter. He is a very likable and like relatable person that does really well at recruiting. When he got to Alabama, they were at a point where it was one of the lowest they'd have been in program history. Now, he didn't have the greatest tenure there, but here's what people forget about when he got to Alabama. When he was named the head coach, he was named the head coach after they fired somebody in June, right? He got the job and they had their first game, and his first game as a head coach 2.5 months later. That season did not go great, but they were coming off of a season, I think in 2000, they were like 3-8. Then they went like 7-5. They had a 10-win season, but they were on probation. They go 4-9 his first year. Again, 2.5 months to prepare. And then I think they're like 6-6 with a bunch of injuries. And then his third season, the offense flourishes. He had a healthy quarterback with Brody Croyle. He had some weapons at receiver, and they win 10 games. They were ranked very high late in the season. I think their best player got hurt. I don't remember. But what I remember most about that, and the story that gets lost the most with Shula, because we talk about his coaching record, we talk about his resume, we talk about the 2015 thing with Cam, is he was very close to signing Tim Tebow. And that sounds crazy because Tebow grew up, his whole family went to Florida. He'd been a Florida fan his entire life. If you've heard Tebow talk about his recruitment, like even now, 20 years later, he goes on and on about how close he was to actually going to Alabama because of Mike Shula. And we don't have to get into a sliding doors episode of like what could have happened. Like you want to talk about changing the whole landscape of college football if that would have happened. Not because they would have won a bunch of games, but like if Tebow goes to Bama, Saban definitely does not. But anyway, the Shula factor of that, like he is a really, really good recruiter. He's a player's coach. People really, really like playing for him. Now, you also have the incredible, long resume. And over the last decade plus, right, he has been an offensive coordinator or a quarterback's coach. Those two positions are the two roles he had the most in his 34 plus years of coaching experience. I want to talk to you about the 2013 through 2019 seasons where he was the offensive coordinator for the Panthers for 5 years and then also the Giants for 2. There's one thing that stood out to me more than anything. Okay. There's two things that stood out to me more than anything. None of the numbers were crazy. The Panthers led the NFL in points per game in 2015 with 31.3. Outside of that, you're talking about in between 16 to 21, 16 to 21st in the NFL in most of their major statistical categories, except for one. In those 7 seasons, Mike Shula had a top 10 rushing offense or top 11 rushing offense in 5 of them. 5 straight years with the Panthers. They were top 11 in the NFL. In that 2015 season, they were second. He is going to have an emphasis on run game production. Now, the weird part about that, and I just told you the numbers, he had a top 10 rushing offense. The run to pass ratio of his offenses, I'm going to take you through the 5 years in Carolina. So the 2013, we'll start there. 48.3%, 45.6%, 2015, 50.1. That was the highest. In 2016, 43.1, and then 2017, 47.8% run to pass ratio. That may not sound like a huge surprise to you. That is. Usually you will see a run to pass ratio of any offense at least around 55%. He was over 50% just once. So what that tells me is this: the emphasis on the run game is not a crazy staple of his offenses. However, the production of the run game and what he's able to get out of the run game, like, again, you're talking about incredibly low percentages of play calls for run plays, and you're still getting a top 10 rushing offense in the entire NFL. That's very, very impressive. The other part of that is you look at that 2015 season specifically. There was never another season. I think there's one other season in Cam Newton's entire career where he averaged over 9 yards or over 9 carries a game. In the 2015 season, it looked a little bit more like his days at Auburn, where we know we have a 6'6", 250-pound running, or not running back, 6'6", 250-pound quarterback that is the best athlete on the field. And if he falls forward, he's getting 3 yards. Right. So let's make sure we don't run him to death and put him in bad situations where he's going to get hurt. But we got a unicorn back here. Let's take advantage of that. And they did. You will see that. and a lot of power runs with Lenore Sellers coming next season. Like that's one part of his game that I think is going to only get even more impressive and even better going into his second season as a starter, which is that's a big dude. That's a big dude. Like, you don't want him taking on a lot of contact, but what you're going to start seeing from Lenore Sellers now that he's experienced and he knows he can outrun everybody is he's going to start running through people too. So that is one takeaway from it. Now, I told you the run pass ratios from his offenses, from Shula's offenses, over the 7 seasons where he was at Carolina and for the New York Giants as well. That really doesn't align with the way, at least the most recent offense for South Carolina was run. Last season, the run pass ratio for South Carolina ran the ball on 62.8% of their plays. I should have done a breakdown of what that looked like more in the second half of the season because they did air it out a little bit more. That's really schematically the only big difference you are going to see. I don't think you're going to see them just airing it out. Like I don't think that would be the plan of attack or the identity of the offense going into next year. I think that you will see some changes. It will not be anything groundbreaking. It will not be anything that is a night and day difference. It'll be a lot of the same concepts. It's going to look, it's going to look like most, and I hate to bring this name up because obviously the way it ended when he was here, but when Todd Monken was at Georgia, the transition from him to Bobo, and Kirby Smart made this clear, which is, I fully understand that you were the offensive coordinator here for a decade. I got it. We're not going to run that type of offense. We're going to run the offense that Monken just ran. So there's going to be times where Carson Beck's going to throw it 40 times in a game. And even though we have this big offensive line, we're not going to run the ball 50 times a game. Like, that's not going to be our identity anymore. I think this transition of power, for lack of better words, from Loggains to Shula, especially what we saw on the offense from the second half of the season, is going to look very similar. All of those concepts are going to be in place for next year, and they are not going to stray too far from that because now you have a proven, track record and sample size of, okay, this is the success we have. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And for the last 6 games, it wasn't broke. It wasn't at all. You were averaging 110 yards more per game, over 8 points more per game in the second half of the season. They are going to continue to roll with that because it's worked, and there's no reason to go away from it. So that is the Shula deep dive. It's not that deep of a dive, just a lot of numbers and then a recruiting story. But I do love the hire. I think it's going to be really good for South Carolina. I think that it's fun to see this guy who's like, he's just passionate about coaching. Like, you can just tell that Mike Shula is a guy that just like really enjoys what he does. And there's a lot of guys on staff that it feels that that's how they approach their business every day. Beamer especially, but Sean Elliott's like that. And I'll tell you what, and we're going to get into this a little bit when we talk about the portal after this break, but like, one of the things, again, like from a recruiting standpoint, if you're worried about that, I know the Tebow stories from like 20 years ago, right? There's multiple people on staff. Like, Mike Ferry had never recruited before. He's done great. And the talent he's brought in at receiver has been great in his first season. Like, I think that if you are concerned about the hire, look outside of Satterfield, look at Beamer's track record, because it's really, really good and really consistently good with the hires he's made and what we're going to talk about next when we come back from break, as well as the guys he got in the portal. So we'll close out with some portal talk. We're going to close out with some things that we need to address that have been in the comment section over the last couple of episodes. Just some things we need to, some airing of grievances and clearing the air on a few things. But make sure you stick around for that. Before we go to break, I do want to tell you real quick about our friends at Omaha Steaks. Listen, nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. It makes Christmas and Christmas time so much better. Make sure you are heading over to omahasteaks.com. They have an incredible list of not just steaks, but I mean legendary steaks to mouthwatering desserts and more. Remember, you can save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Now, listen, I've told you this before. It's guaranteed perfection every single bite. And right now you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide. Plus, score an extra $30 off with the promo code COLLEGE. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience. And the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites. Listen, on top of the 50% off that I already mentioned, our listeners will get an extra $30 off using the promo code COLLEGE. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with the promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchase may apply. Visit omahasteaks.com. All right, we will be right back and close out today's episode of Locked On Gamecocks. All right, we're going to close out some portal talk. It'll be very brief. Before we do, you guys have been an incredible audience. Not a lot of negativity in the comments that I have seen over the 5 months of doing the show. That's very different than how most things happen on social media or YouTube. And so I'm very appreciative of how connected you guys are and all the input you guys have, your takeaways, your reactions, all that kind of stuff. You guys clearly understand this team, this program, and the game better than most. Yesterday, we did an episode on the portal, and I brought up in the very last segment, after 30 minutes in the show, I brought up a very brief thing about something that was presented to me from our manager at Locked On, who runs the entire college side of the game, about, hey, did you hear? Did you say something about the Lenore Sellers portal rumors? And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, Google it. And I brought that up. I brought it up on the show yesterday, and in the very brief time we talked about it, the entire takeaway of it from me and the words I said out loud were, there's no way it's going to happen. This is one of the dumbest things I've seen. The sites that were reporting it weren't reputable sites, and it was trash. There's no way he's leaving. I'm not sure how bringing up that it's being talked about, not rumors that he's going to leave, but baseless facts or baseless non-facts being thrown around the internet is not something that should be shocking. But I just want to reiterate, if just because we're talking about something that is being said on the internet does not mean that the rumors are coming from me. If anybody's watched the show, there's not been one time I'm like, hey, little birdie told me Lenore Sellers might leave. No. So please, let's not confuse us talking about things, especially in a long, long off season, as it being my opinion. If we're just talking about something else that's being said, doesn't necessarily mean that I believe it, agree with it, or whatever. But we are going to talk about it because, of course, we are. Anyway, just want to get that out there. Today, we talk about the portal. There's over 1,400 FBS players who have already entered the portal in the first 3 days. I thought about this is what I think we're going to do with the portal talk, because the window's open for 2 days or for 2 weeks. And then there's a dead period. And then there's a little bit after in January as well. We're obviously going to break down the bowl game, all that kind of stuff. But I want to highlight one guy a day in the portal that I think would be a good fit, or somebody that a name you should know, or a name that Carolina is being linked to, or should be getting linked to. And it's funny because I thought about this last night, and then I look in today. The first person I wanted to bring up actually is on his visit starting tomorrow. Andrew Jones, not the baseball player. Andrew Jones, dude, it looks like he was born to be a linebacker. We talked about this on the positions of need episode yesterday. Linebacker is a position of need for this team going into next year. You lose so much production there. You lose, obviously, Debo. You lose Demetrius Knight, and like so much production. I think it's like 100-something career games. You lose 199 combined tackles from this year's team. There's a lot to replace from that unit specifically. This is a guy that I think that it would be a great fit. And I got really excited about it, especially because he's being linked to other places. It's a 4-star recruit out of high school. He went to Memphis. He ended up going to Grambling. This year, he's 6'2", 220. And again, not an ounce of fat on him, just built to be a linebacker. He was named the SWAC Co-Defensive Player of the Year and was first team all-conference. He finished last season with 122 tackles, 20 and a half tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. The 20 and a half tackles for loss made my ears perk up more than anything because, I mean, that's a guy who's just clearly always around the ball and always around the play. And we also talk about the production from this year's team specifically, and in like negative plays and forcing negative plays. That's something you have to replace. You lose about half those off of kids that are graduating and all that kind of stuff. I think this would be a great get. And here's the last thing I'll say about it. One of the things I'm most excited to see in this portal cycle with South Carolina is, I don't want to jinx it, but like you think about how many names go in the portal. Think about how many kids go to SEC schools in the portal, right? Every single season, every single time it's open. And I don't think a bunch of them or a ton of them are busts. I don't think it's like an overwhelming amount, but think about how many guys enter the portal. And then you just kind of like, never hear from them again. Now think about like the guys that Shane Beamer and his staff have brought in and the level of success they've had comparatively to like what they've had before in their college career. And also like the buzz around them as players, like before they got into South Carolina. Like Kyle Kennard is going to be a first-round draft pick. Kyle Kennard just was named SEC Defensive Player of the Year. That's a guy you got in the portal last year. The success that Beamer has had, like, and we'll get more into this probably in tomorrow's episode because I'm very excited about it again. But the success that Beamer has had in the portal, it's not like he's brought in droves of people. But your leading rusher this year is a portal player. Your leading receiver on the team this year, you got in the portal 2 years ago. Josh Simon at tight end. Demetrius Knight is a portal player you got from Charlotte. He's going to play on Sundays now. Kyle Kennard, like think about like the impact those guys had on this year's team on both sides of the ball. Those are guys that were like, I mean, like clearly not a lot of other people were going to Atlanta at Georgia Tech to go see Kennard or going to Charlotte to see Demetrius Knight, and Beamer was. Now, Rocket Sanders is the guy that was an all-SEC running back. Like, everyone knew who Rocket Sanders was. There's just so, like, listen, you went out and got a big name, and you hit a home run with Rocket Sanders. Then you went to another Power 4 team, and you hit a home run with a defensive end player. And then you just, for good measure, you went to a G5 school, and then made that guy also have a tremendous amount of success and developed him in his first year in your program. Now he's going to play in the NFL. And every single possible scenario that I just listed, you knocked it out of the park. And why that's really important is because it's not because like, oh yeah, he's going to do that every time, because you're going to miss at some point, right? But what that does tell you is the amount of players and the level of quality players that's going to attract to this team and this program. It just makes it even stronger, and the culture especially. But now you have like proof. You have proof of like, hey, like look what we were able to do for that guy, right? Like Rocket Sanders was I didn't think he was going to be that productive this year. He's coming off an injury. Fantastic. And I tell you what gets me excited more than anything. We'll close out with this, I promise. The portal should be a supplement to how you are building the program long term, right? It's super helpful for teams that want to like make a quick turnaround, all that kind of stuff. And with the way that they have hit on these guys, like and the success rate they've had with the guys, like for 1 and 2 years at a time, that's huge. But what are the 3 most important positions in football? The 3 most valuable positions in football. the three most valuable positions for one. And the 3 positions that are going to cost you the most amount of money, right? Like LSU right now is going to have to go out and get 10 to 12 guys in the portal this class. They're going to have to replace Will Campbell, who is a first-round pick at left tackle. They're going to have to go find a tackle, right? Like they're going to have to get some help off the edge. They passed on it last year and they swung and missed. Excuse me, guys. They swung and missed with several guys, not just edge rushers, but also defensive linemen. And it cost them. And now they're going to they struck out on getting Bryce Underwood. Luckily, Garrett Nussmeier is going to come back for them. But, like, that's going to cost money. Like they are going to have to go out and get talent at the three most important positions, or at least two of the three, which is not going to be cheap. The thing that South Carolina has in place for at least another season, probably two, guys, the three most important positions, you're set. Lenore Sellers is a quarterback. Josiah Thompson is a first-year All-SEC freshman starter at left tackle, only going to get better. Oh, then by the way, Dylan Stewart, like already a star, but off edge. Like at the very least, you've got three guys that are the ceiling is so high and they've already been so successful in their first season as starters, and now you have those as like foundational pieces at the most important pieces or positions, so you don't have to go spend any money, which means you can go spend it on other things and get even more pieces to make a run at this thing. Anyway. That is all for today's episode. I appreciate you guys. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. We'll be back again tomorrow to talk more about the portal and what I just said. Locked On Gamecocks will continue then. Thanks, guys.